I was at a health optimization summit. That's the name of the summit, and it was a bunch of biohackers and longevity experts and very interesting frontier tech in this whole health space. And when I was there, I was wondering to myself, wow, this is the icing on the cake here. What about the cake itself? Like what do we need to understand from such a cohort, because they're in their own echo chamber in terms of they're trying to optimize their health. For some
Hmm.
people, before the optimization, there is so much more to do, and
Right,
that's why we're here.
right.
So to start off, I wanted to ask you to tell your watermelon story, and just start off with that. How did you come to where you are now, and why do you do what you do?
I'll start off with the watermelon story, but I think I want to provide a little bit of context for the story. So often I am asked if there was a moment, there was a turning point for you. And on this journey that I have had of gaining and losing over 700 pounds over 40 years, I have many moments that were turning points. Many moments when I thought at the time that was going to be the last turning point, only to find out that another one was going to show up. So I think in many ways I was in search of the turning point that would give me the ultimate understanding that I needed in order to start managing not just my weight, but to give me the authority to understand and know how food, eating, and hunger work together. And that's what was missing for me for so long, just a fundamental understanding. And I think that's what's missing for a lot of people. I would say for most people, because we live in a toxic environment, a toxic food environment, a toxic emotional environment that perpetuates the notion that food can do something other than satisfy hunger, that food is entertainment, that food is culture, right? That it is something that you do when you're lonely. It's your salvation, it's boredom. It has all these special properties to meet emotional needs that it does not meet. I didn't always have that understanding. I didn't always know that. I just ate because I ate. I mean, really, I just ate because food was around. And but what happened was on this last leg, I went to a weight loss doctor, and I had over the years since the 80s, I've been going to weight loss doctors since the 1980s. But this time I went because I had had surgery, not bariatric surgery or tummy tuck or anything like that, but I had had really far too many rounds of liposuction. And I thought if I could just get this liposuction and get this fat sucked out and get down to a 14, what I call a black woman's 10, if I can get to a 14, I can maintain it. But I wasn't. I wasn't able to maintain it. And I was so distressed because I was just like, if I can just get there, I can do it, I can do it. But the weight, this outside thing, it started to come back on, right? And I think that's sometimes why we call it the weight, because we don't know what it is. It's something outside of us. But anyway, so the weight started coming back on. I was horrified, and I went to this wellness doctor that I had been seeing, and she said, "I will help you. I will help you if you follow this plan, take these shots, you will not be hungry. You'll lose weight and you will not be hungry." I didn't, Sarthak, I didn't have any issue with that. I knew I could lose the weight because I had done it many times before. But in her office, I prayed and I said, help me, God, help me understand what I'm missing, because I have got to get off this hamster wheel of losing and gaining, losing and gaining, losing and gaining. And so I prayed there in her office, something that I had never done about weight. I'd prayed before, but not about the weight, not about my weight situation. And I prayed for guidance, for understanding, to know what I didn't know, right? And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I wanted to I wanted to know it so I could do it. So I took the plan from the doctor. I took the shots, and I was doing well. I'd go back in every week, and she said, "Oh my God, you're doing well. You're losing weight," and it was coming along. I knew I could do that. And then one day, I had finished eating. I'd taken my shot. I was following my plan, and I wanted to eat something. And I don't even remember now exactly what it was, but I had a desire to eat. And I thought to myself, why do I want to eat? Because the doctor just said, you will not be hungry if you take these shots, follow this plan. And I'm not hungry. Why do I want to eat? And I have to tell you something. I was 60 years old at that point. That was the first time that I can remember ever asking myself that particular question. Why do you want to eat right now? Why do you want to eat right now? Because I had this backdrop of the doctor saying you won't be hungry. So if she just told me you will not be hungry, and I'm saying I know I'm not hungry, why do I want to eat? And I sat with that. I sat with that question. And as I sat with that question, a memory bubbled up. And I don't, you're listening to me now. You're in Texas. I'm from Texas. I grew up in Texas. I grew up in the South, and we were on my uncle's farm. It was like sometime. And my uncle, here's the thing about my uncle. My uncle was a retired merchant seaman. He had been all over the world and done everything in the world. He's like a man's man kind of guy, right? And so he had retired. We're having a family barbecue cookout on his farm. You know, black folks barbecue cookout. We bring out the watermelon. So we brought out the watermelon, and I said to my uncle Billy, "Do you want some watermelon?" And he looked at me. He said, "No, I don't eat watermelon." Now understand, my uncle at this time was probably 70 years old. And so he said, "I don't eat watermelon." I'm like, what do you mean you don't eat watermelon? Everybody eats watermelon. We're on your farm. It's your watermelon. I mean, do you not like it? Is that why you're not going to eat it? Do you not going to eat it right now? And he was like, "Just no, I just don't eat it." And so I kept pestering him, and I wore him down really. And finally, after a good bit of back and forth, he finally told me that he didn't eat watermelon because when he was a kid, maybe I don't know, 6, 7 years old, he and some buddies stole a watermelon from a neighbor's garden, and this was 1930s Marshall, Texas. I want you to remember. It was 1930s Marshall, Texas, in the segregated South. And if they watermelons were out, that means it was summertime and it was hot. So he and his buddies stole the watermelon. My grandfather, who's his father, found out about it, and my grandfather was not happy. And so here's something I want you to know about my grandfather. My grandfather was a railroad worker, and my grandfather was a church trustee. And the one person that a kid who just stole a watermelon does not want to meet is that guy. And so when my grandmother found out about it, he beat my uncle. He beat him. He beat him so severely that 60 years later, my uncle still did not eat watermelon. And that story, my uncle told me that story sometime in the 1990s. And when he told me, I asked him, "Billy, do you think, well, maybe the 60 years later, now that you have a little perspective and all, do you think maybe the lesson was supposed to be thou shalt not steal?" And my uncle just looked at me and said, "I don't eat watermelon." And that was that. And I have got to tell you, Sarthar, when that story bubbled up in my consciousness, when I was sitting there in my bedroom wondering why do I want to eat and I'm not hungry, that story came up and I said, "Oh my God, this is the answer." My uncle did not eat watermelon, could not eat watermelon because of the memory, the event, the experience that he attached to it. It was so painful that eating the watermelon would take him back to that painful moment, and he didn't want it. But all this was like, it was conscious for him. But this stuff happens to all of us on a subconscious level. We make these associations to food that drive us to the food because we want the thing that the food represents, not the food itself. We get those things confused. And when I think about my uncle and I think about that watermelon story, there's a bunch of stuff going on. I mean, that whole story is a metaphor for how we manage food, our emotions, and life on a much grander scale. And I'll even start with my grandfather. My grandfather beat my uncle because he was a church trustee. He didn't want anybody thinking that he was raising a thief, right? So he was afraid of what other people would think about him if they found out. So fear drove my grandfather's actions around that watermelon. Not only that, my grandfather worked. My grandmother did not work. She wasn't called a stay-at-home mom back then and back then, but he took great pride in the fact that he could take care of his family. He was not going to have anybody saying, they found Pete Pettis, his son, he's out stealing watermelons. He's not going to have anybody saying that, having people think that he can't take care of his family. Not going to happen. So he's like nipping that in the bud. And another thing, this was the segregated South, Marshall, Texas, Deep South in the 1930s. I am sure in the back of my grandfather's mind, or even in the front of my grandfather's mind, he had to make sure that his son would not steal something from the wrong person. I mean, as a little kid, he didn't know. He didn't need him out, stealing and steal from the wrong person. Next thing you know, he's dead somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So all of that was going. That's what that food meant to my grandfather, right? To my uncle, he and some buddies stole a watermelon. If my uncle had been by himself, he wouldn't have just gone in somebody's yard and stole a watermelon. He was with a group. He was with, and so how many times are we at home when we're just sitting home minding our business, and somebody says, "Hey, girl, you want to join us? We're all going out to eat." You're like, "Yeah, I want to go," right? Right? Because it's the group. You're at home by yourself. You're not even thinking about food, but because you don't want to miss out, because you want to be part of the excitement, because you want to be right. That's the emotion that's driving you to say yes, even though you just ate. But they just called and said, we're going out to eat. Now it's entertainment. Now it's social. Now it's that piece. Second of all, it was summertime. They stole that watermelon. They probably weren't even hungry. They were probably thirsty. That was a watermelon, right? They probably wanted some water. It was hot in the summertime. How many times do we eat when we're really thirsty because we don't know the difference, right? Right? It was summertime. They were out of school. They were likely bored. What do you want to do? Or right? So stealing that watermelon gave them some excitement. It was something to cure the boredom. Those are all ways that people use food now that do not serve them. And when I remembered that story, my life changed. I call my life before the watermelon story and life after the watermelon story, because it brought me into consciousness about why I eat what I eat.
What a beautiful answer, first of all, on your why. It's so strong. It's not just to do with you at all. It's to do with how your family has grown up, how they have associated with food, and how you see the links between their association to yours. So my question for you is, when you let's talk about life before watermelon and life post watermelon. What was your relationship with food before, and what changed after? How do you view food now?
Okay, all right. I I view food now for what I read when I looked it up in Google. Nutrition, nourishment, energy. I see food as a tool to live the life I want to live. And people ask me, what do you eat? And I can answer that question, but the bigger question really isn't what is it that you eat. The bigger question is this, or the bigger answer is this, is that I understand and know the reason behind everything that I eat. I am completely conscious about everything I put in my mouth, which is a different place. When you start with the understanding that I eat so that I can be alive. I eat for my health. I eat for cognition. I eat so that I can perform better. I eat to fortify my brain, my body, my spirit, because it is real food is life-giving. It is life-giving, it is life-sustaining. That is its purpose. There's a physical purpose for it. This is not consciousness that I had before the watermelon story. Before the watermelon story, the only way that I made a decision about what I was going to eat was based on whether or not it tastes good. But what tastes good? Not an evaluation of its nutritional value, right? Just What looks good, what tastes good. And I know I was not, and many people are still making their decisions that same way. But we are socialized and we're marketed to make decisions. You go out to a restaurant, open up a menu. What's the question? What looks good to you? Right? That what looks good? I've had that before. That's good. What did you get? Yours looks really good. I should have gotten that. All that's emotion, and all of it, none of it has anything to do with why we should be eating in the first place.
70% of our food is unprocessed in the US market.
Mhm.
Almost half the population in the US is pre-diabetic or diabetic.
Mhm. Mhm.
People are obese.
Mhm.
People have mental health conditions that are clearly, now there's research that there's downstream effects from the food we directly put in our body to the mental health and state we're at. How have we gotten here?
Yeah, we got here. It has been by design. And I will tell you, this grand design, this grand scheme, I didn't know anything. I didn't know it when I wrote my book. When I wrote my book, Leaving Large: The Stories of a Food Addict, the subtitle is The Stories of a Food Addict. If I had known then, in 2021, when I wrote my book, what I know now, the title might have been Leaving Large: The Stories of a Processed Food Addict, because it is the processing and the stripping of nutrients. That's one of the things that has gotten us to this place. That's one of the things that has gotten us to this place. But there's some other factors. There are other factors that are outside of us as individuals that have contributed to it, which is why this is so insidious. Because what happens is that people think it's their fault. They think it's something that they're doing that they have to do, that has got us to the point where, I'm an African American woman. Four out of five African American women are either overweight or obese, and the rest of the population is not that far behind us. That just didn't happen. We didn't just wake up with that happening. So here's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the fact that the processed food manufacturers, the snack food manufacturers, the junk food manufacturers, they design the food to be addictive. That's the first A. They formulate it to be addictive. There's something that's called the bliss point. I don't know if you're familiar with the bliss point, but it's the formulation of ingredients: the salt, the sugar, the fat, the flour, the preservatives, the additives, everything in it that takes whatever people are eating to a certain level, that it hits the dopamine centers that make it addictive and irresistible. That make it irresistible. So the food is formulated, or the stuff is formulated to be addictive, to be irresistible, to be palatable, to be easy to eat, to be enjoyable. And because it's stripped of nutrients and pumped with sugar and a bunch of other stuff, it's high calorie. It's high calorie and addictive, and it's not even food. And so it hits and acts in the brain the same way that other addictive substances impact the brain. You take the research, and you see the research, and you will see, based on some research, sugar is more addictive than cocaine. You look at the pictures, the brain is lit up in the very same way. And yet people are told to go on a diet. And so, but what you can't go on a diet when you're dealing with addiction. The way you manage the two is completely different. So what we're dealing with folks that are addicted to processed food and think they need to be on a diet, and they think the processed food is really food, but it's not. What it is drugs. What it is a lab experiment. So that that's one thing that has gotten us here. The fact that it's addictive. I was just in line today. I went to the store to buy some grapes. I'm standing in line, and I see all the candy. And I'm kind of looking at it, right? And I pick up a candy bar, a candy bar that I used to eat when I was a kid. And I looked at it, and it was about this long. And I looked on the package, and it said 150 calories per serving. And then it said serving size, a third of a bar. And I thought to myself, who buys this and eats a third of it? Nobody. Nobody. But that's 450 calories of not only something that is not nutritious, but is harmful. And that's the thing that most people don't understand, is that what we put in our bodies, it's either going to heal us or it's going to hurt us. It's going to cure us or it's going to kill us. It is not neutral. It is not neutral. And why on earth would we want to eat something that's not that bad for me? Not that bad. Why is that? Why is that the standard? That's not that. That's not that bad, right?
Hmm.
Well, I got to tell you, for this one and only body that I have, I want all good all the time. That's what I'm looking for. So, how did we get here? Back to, they formulated to be addictive. And what has happened, and here's what happened in the 80s, as the government started to regulate the tobacco companies, right? Because tobacco was killing people, right? It was killing people, lung disease, right? Causes cancer. Finally, let's admit that. So they're regulating it. In the midst of all of this, the tobacco companies find out about the snack food companies and the junk food companies. And what they do is that they buy into the snack food companies and take their addiction business model to the snack food companies. I'm and you can see it. I'm old enough to remember when cigarette vending machines used to be everywhere. They were in airports, they were in stores, they were in school. I mean, out shopping, you could get a pack of cigarettes from a vending machine just anywhere. But now what we see vending machines for chips and sodas, and we see snack food vending machines for cigarettes have now been replaced with vending machines for this processed stuff. For this processed stuff. And so they make it accessible, right? So they create it, make it addictive. Now it's accessible. Then they make it affordable. Oh, you're here. Yeah, that's all it costs. Yep. It's affordable. They advertise it day in and day out. So the advertising makes you think certain things about it, creates desire for it, even when you're not hungry. You see it and your brain is triggered. I want you to think about the fast food joints. Think about McDonald's of the world, the Burger Kings of the world, the In-N-Out burgers. Look at the signs. The signs all have red and yellow. Think about it. Wendy's red, yellow. All the signs are like that. They use those colors because those colors stimulate appetite. Those colors stimulate appetite. So we're fighting a machine, a marketing machine, neuroscientists that know more about our brain and what our brains do in relation to food and associations and emotions than we do. And so we are programmed to have desire for that which does not serve our health. We're programmed with misinformation. The only thing, oh, it's delicious, it's crunchy, it's tasty, it's silky, it's scrumptious. All those words that are used to describe the stuff that they call food, that first of all isn't food because it's not nutritious and nourishing, and not food because it's made in a lab. It's actually drugs. So we are programmed to have desire for that stuff by the people that make it. It's the only information that we have about it. We trust that, and it's killing us because it is building their bottom line. And if you go and you want to look a little deeper, you start look at who's on the board. Start looking at who's on the boards of the pharmaceutical companies and who's on the board of the fast food companies. They're on each other's boards. They're on each other's boards. We don't know that. All we know is that you can get 2 for 1. So we have gotten here because sugar is in everything. Why is sugar in nuts?
That's pretty
Why?
nuts.
Why? It is. It's pretty nuts, right? Why is sugar in salt? Why is sugar in vegetables? Right? First of all, it's cheap, right? It's cheap. There's a very strong sugar lobby. It makes stuff, people think it makes stuff taste better. But it's not even food. It is just a highly addictive substance. So that's all it is. It is a highly addictive substance. There's no reason to eat it. It breaks down our body. So what we're doing is we have all these foods that have sugar in it, and all people think about is, oh my good, that tastes so good, it looks so good. Well, when you start reprogramming your mind, what you start thinking is that's addictive. If I eat one, I won't be able to stop eating it. And you know what? This causes disease. This causes blindness. If I eat that, they might cut off my foot. So if you start having different visions in your head about what it means to eat certain things, then you'll start thinking about it differently. But we need to put different things in our head rather than the information that's put in our heads from the people that are trying to sell it.
You said to write clearly, you must think clearly. How can we gain more clarity about how to think about food? What would you also said right now that these foods are on specifically these processed foods are made accessible, affordable, advertisable. What can we do to make unprocessed foods accessible, affordable, advertisable?
Yeah. All right. So the first thing we have to do is, and you said it, is we have to get clarity. We have to get really, really clear. And before we focus on making the foods, the unprocessed foods available and all that, the first thing we have to do is we have to create desire for them, right? Once there's more desire for the unprocessed stuff, once there's more desire for the healthy stuff, once what we have to do is we have to create more messages that point out the evils of the processed stuff. We have to make the processed stuff undesirable. We have to kill desire for that. We have to start shedding the light and the truth on how deadly that stuff is. We need to do that first. And at the same time, start creating messages that change what we think and what we believe about that which is healthy.
At this point, just to on this topic, we all know about, maybe not all of us, but a lot of the population has an idea that there's disease going around. They might have a person, one connection away from them that is going through one of these morbidities, be it obesity, be it some terminal illnesses. There's the knowledge, or at least the knowing of these diseases out there. Why are we still in a lifestyle that is not conducive
Sure.
to our health?
Because of all the things that I have told you, because the marketing has hijacked people's brains. That's the first thing. And people are addicted. So we have to deal with the marketing and we have to deal with the addiction. People have to you have to get your brain back. So it is not like you can have the what and the how. You can have all that, but there's a space in between that. And everybody's watermelon story is in that space between. Our stories, our beliefs about the food are in that space. And so we have to change our beliefs. People have to learn how to change their thoughts about food. And here's the thing about this, Arthak, is that we aren't taught that. People aren't taught that. I teach people how to do that. And because it is brain work, because it is mental work, we hear this statement, especially in the weight loss world, is you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. It's 80% of what you eat and 20% how you move, right? But here's the truth about that: it's 100% what you think. So you have to do the 100% thinking before you can do the 80/20. The 100% has to come first. And the way I will tell you now, I'll tell you now, here's how you get to that 100%. In my TED Talk, I talked about those questions, the 4 questions to ask anybody before you put anything in your mouth. I ask us those same questions myself every day. That's how I stay in recovery, and I teach those questions. It takes practice to do that. Well, you'll get to the point where you just do it automatically. It just becomes a part of you, right? You have to ask those questions, but the other thing you have to do, you have to be intentional about reclaiming your brain from the addiction and from the food marketers. And the way that you do that, first of all, you do that in community. You do that with other people who are looking to do the same thing. You do it through visualization. And it's visualizing something that is more important than the food. To constantly have that in front of you, the thing that is more important than what something tastes like. And that takes practice, that takes imagination. You have to be taught how to do that. Be able to go into that visualization. Some people call it your why, right? So if you're, I think about this guy, and I just read about. I don't know him. I read about him on Facebook. His wife needed a kidney transplant. His wife needed. I'm sorry. His wife needed a kidney. He was a match, but he was overweight. So he went on a diet, lost 70 pounds so he could give his wife a kidney. So every decision, once that happened, every decision that he made about what he was going to eat was about saving his wife's life. Not about the food, not about, right? That vision, that's what he was visualizing. He was visualizing his wife being well. He was visualizing them having 20, 30, 40, 50 more years together. It wasn't about the food for him, and it's not about the food for any of us. It is about how we want to live our life, how we want to show up, how we want to feel, how we want to think, that decision, and then eat to serve that vision. That's when you're in alignment, right? But but I figured out my problem was I was unconsciously eating too much of the wrong thing for the wrong reason. That awareness and that consciousness, that's the first thing I teach people. That's the first step. In order to change your belief, you got to know what your current belief is. If your beliefs about life, your beliefs about food are keeping you stuck or keeping you in ill health, you have to know what they are. You have to be able to look at them before you can rewrite them and start reversing it. So that's the visualization. The second thing in getting your brain back, we have to reprogram our own minds to eat for our own health and life. It's affirmations. And the affirmations are so important. Because we have like 60,000 thoughts that run around in our head. My numbers could be off, but there's a whole bunch of them. And if we have them, then we need to control them to eat and have thoughts about food and thoughts about emotions, more importantly, that allow us to use food in a helpful way. But we don't. But we don't know what they are. So we have to create new ones to move the debilitating ones out of the way. And we have to say them over and over again. We have to write them over and over again. It is like learning how to manage food and emotions from scratch. It's like being in kindergarten or being in the first grade. I know you're kind of young and maybe you didn't do this, but when I was in the first grade and we were learning how to write, we all got a big fat pencil. We all little first graders, we got a big fat pencil, and we had to copy the letters that were around the top of the classroom. And all of our letters looked jacked up. They were all kind of like to the side. They were kind of shaky. And every day the teacher would say, "Oh, your letters look so beautiful. You have such good penmanship. But you're a smart kid. You know about that." No, I'm not. This is janky. It didn't look like the letters up on the board. But every day you had to practice. Every day you had to practice your ABCs. You had to practice your penmanship. By the end of the semester, your A's, your alphabets, everything like it looks straight. It looks a little better because you're practicing it every day, and you're getting reinforced, positive reinforcement every day. And it's so strong and so good. And next thing you know, when you're in the next grade, now you're writing cursive. Maybe you don't know how to write cursive. Maybe they don't teach that now, but it was script writing. And so now you're like, now I got to do this other hard thing. Now you got a little skinny pencil, and you're practicing the script and the cursive writing every day, and it gets smooth and it gets better, and it gets so good at some point that once you get really good, instead of putting the I above, instead of dotting the I, you draw a little heart. Instead of drawing the T with the line straight across, you draw the T and you put a little curly Q on it. And sometimes you might put a little curly Q under your name. And the reason that happens is because now you're writing from a place of mastery. Now you're writing from a place of joy. That thing that was so hard at the very beginning now is something that gives you some pleasure because you went through the work of learning how to do it. You replaced all the messages and thoughts of not being able to do it with the actual ability to do it because you did it every day. You practiced it every day. And that's how it is with affirmations. That's how it is with affirmations when you affirm that you're eating to honor your body, not because you're bored, not because you're lonely, not because you're stressed, not because of anything else other than the fact that you're hungry and this is going to be nourishing and serve you. So it's affirmation, then meditation. And meditation is so important because meditation is exercise for your brain. It's exercise for your mind. And as we hear this language all the time, oh, it's an eating disorder, these kind of eating disorders. I would suggest to you that it's not an eating disorder, none of it. It's a thinking disorder. And because eating is an action, and before every action, you have to think. And if you correct your thinking, if you correct your believing, then the action will follow. It won't be a fight. It won't be a battle because your body has to follow your mind. So if we work on, right, changing our mind, changing our beliefs about food, changing our thoughts, that's where the affirmations come in. Just stay dialed in on that. Then meditation allows you to control your thoughts. If you see a payday, what I was just talking about a little bit earlier, you see the candy bar, you see the orange, you see the yellow and red signs, you see somebody else eating. None of that matters because you have trained your mind to see the truth. So that meditation becomes so important, especially in managing food, especially in managing emotions. But it also, once you do it, you're able to apply it to every other area of your life. All of this becomes a skill that's transferable. Absolutely. So now we've got the visualization, we got the affirmations, we've got the meditation, and the final piece is the writing, what I call prescriptive writing. It is writing for healing. Because this that we're dealing with, those of us, those who are battling with obesity, those who have obesity, those who are dealing with food addiction, any sort of addiction, that's disease. It's disease. And one of the ways that we help manage disease and get on the other side of disease is through the arts and writing. Writing is an art. I use poetry in helping people manage these diseases. So not just writing, but when you are able to write for healing, and I'm not talking about keeping a food log. I'm not even talking about keeping a journal, right?
Hmm.
Because a food log is this is just what I ate. A journal, this is what happened. But when you start to write for healing, you start peeling back the onion. You start going to the who and the what and the when and the where and the why and the what if and the how come, and you start making the connections. You just continue to keep pulling those back. And as you continue to pull that stuff back, truth starts to emerge. Truth starts to emerge. And as you learn how to manage the emotion, deal with the emotion, you don't need the food because first of all, the food can't solve it. But second of all, you're developing the tool to deal with the emotion so that you can use food for what it really is. And those four things, the visualization, the affirmation, the meditation, the prescriptive writing, that a consistent, constant, guided use of those tools day in and day out, you do it for 365 days, you will be completely transformed. You won't recognize yourself at the end of the year. But it happens little. It happens in increments. It's just a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. The same way we gain weight. People get so impatient and frustrated. Oh, I did this, and I only lost a pound. Right? Well, you don't gain weight a pound at a time. Right? We lose it the same way we gain it. And here's the thing: we gain it in our head before we ever gain it in our body. And so we have to lose it the same way. And this current environment does not teach people how to lose it the same way that they gain it.
You've talked about self sabotage as resistance in disguise.
Hmm.
What I want to understand is you named four things here. You said community visualization, meditation, prescriptive writing. The first thing I hear, and I'm channeling the voice of the person that is feeling resistance to when they're hearing this. There's too much you just said. How do I do all of that? all together, all in
Mhm.
once.
Mhm.
How do I do that? It's just not sustainable. I have my relationships to take care of. I need to talk to people. I need to go work. I need
Sure,
to get
sure,
sleep. I need to do all these things. How
sure,
do I put this
sure,
into something that's more sustainable?
sure, sure. So the first thing is to believe that it can be sustainable, and to have have an understanding that in order to get a different result, you're going to have to do some different things. And it is a lot. And what I have just told you is just the tip of the iceberg, right? But here's what happens. You pick a thing. You pick one thing at a time. You pick one thing and you get mastery with that one thing. As they say in sports, and I'm not the greatest sport person with the greatest sports analogy, but you groove your swing, right? You build up some muscle memory. So you pick a thing and you do that until you get excellent at it and you feel good about it and you have mastery over it. Then that thing becomes who you are, and then you move on to the next thing, and you keep layering those things on. And I would start with questions. I would start with questions, because the problem, as I see it, for most people is consciousness and awareness. Is consciousness and awareness. And questions take you to consciousness very quickly. And what I do, I think I mentioned this earlier, and this is a little change that you can start making immediately. Start asking yourself a series of questions before everything you eat and drink. First of all, am I really hungry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Am I frustrated? What just happened? Who just walked in the room? What did I just see? Was I hungry 5 minutes ago? Was I hungry 15 minutes ago? Maybe I'm thirsty. Let me try that. I, a couple years ago, my sweetie and I were on vacation, and we were upstairs, and we had a disagreement about something, right? Well, more importantly, he was wrong. He was wrong about something. And so I left the room. I walked down the stairs, and as I'm walking down the stairs, there are some nuts on the table. So I'm walking down the stairs. He's just said this wrong thing. I see the nuts on the table. I reach my hand out and I grab a handful of nuts. But because I have the tool, because I evaluate everything that I put in my mouth before I put it in my mouth, I ask myself, why do I have the nuts? Why are these nuts in my hand? Right? Am I hungry right now? Why? Why? And then it dawned on me. I was upset. I was upset because of that little tiff that we had. Now back up. If we hadn't been having our little spat and I came down the stairs and saw the nuts, would I still get them? Probably not. Right? What needed to happen for me not to get those nuts? Maybe if they just weren't on the table. If we don't just have stuff sitting out, I wouldn't have even thought about it. Right? So so it's that being able to have that kind of power to be conscious and have an understanding of why you're eating everything. I mean, that requires some personal interrogatory. But you have to do something different if you want something different. So the questions: why that food now? I mean, if it had been potato chips, if it had been donuts, if it had been green beans, why right? Because it happened to be there. If this food is not going to give me the body I say I want, the health I say I want, the life I say I want, why am I eating it? Oh, this won't help me do that. Let me put it down, right? Or there may be times when you might eat it anyway, because you are learning a new skill. But as you're eating it and you're thinking, I'm eating this, but this is not going to help me get what I want. Now you're starting to replace some joy or pleasure you might have felt eating it before. Now you're putting some doubt in it. So now, do I want to be doubtful while I'm eating this? So you think things shift over time. That's something that you used to like. Now you're doubting it. Now, when we have the lesson, when we start breaking down and exploring what the additives actually are, what's actually in the food, you start to learn what's actually there and what it does to your body. Now you move from doubt to mistrust. And then from doubt to mistrust, then you just realize that it's unsafe. And you've got to ask yourself this question: why would I want to eat something that is unsafe? I don't want to eat something that's unsafe, right? So, but it's a continuum. But you continue to ask the questions and you get better at asking the questions. Who gave it to me? Why do I trust them? Right? What should I trust them? What's what's really in there? Why is it that color? All all of those are questions that we aren't taught to aren't taught to ask for the thing that is so basic for us in sustaining life. So the very first thing I would start with is questions. Is this really food? Is this really food, or is it a lab experiment? Because if it's a lab experiment, then it's not gonna do for me what I really want it to do. So start with the questions. Is it food? Is it safe? Am I really hungry? If it's not going to give me the body that I say I want, why am I eating it? And why this food now? It seems like a lot of questions, but after you practice it, you can go through them in about 2 seconds. And that is where the shift in your mind starts to happen.
That question in itself, if you ask yourself the question, the food that I'm eating, is this a lab experiment? If the food you're eating is a lab experiment, then you are probably a lab experiment.
Oh, oh, oh yeah.
So back to this event I went to, I got into some crazy data, crazy stats about our food industry right now. Very, very fascinating. And food and pharma,
Yes.
we can talk for hours about this. I want to ask you about that too. But one of the things I got to know, 90% of NIH researchers are funded, so National Institute of Health researchers are funded by pharmaceutical companies. 80% of these researchers are funded in college. Most of the college research, you take it back, goes back to these pharma companies. Can we just, I really want from this conversation that people get maybe some reasoning and understanding of why is the food that they're putting in their mouth, in their body, why is that important? Like why should they think about this more than other decisions in their life? Why should this be the priority?
All right. So I read something a day or so ago. Well, it's been longer than that, but I read something, and I'm paraphrasing it. It said, when you have your good health, you have 1,000 dreams. When you're in good health, you have 1,000 dreams. You can have 1,000 dreams. When you're in poor health, you have but one.
So true.
And that speaks to me on a really fundamental level, because we hear it, we say it. I grew up hearing people saying, your health is your wealth, without not really understanding it. But it is the truth. And our health is rooted in how we nourish our bodies. That it is bigger. I mean, I went on the diet. I wrote my book. I did all. I started this journey because I wanted to wear cuter clothes. Even I didn't even make the connection to my health. It wasn't a health journey for me. It was a mirror closet journey. That's how disconnected I was from it. I mean, I didn't, I was morbidly obese, but I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have diabetes. But here's the thing, it was coming. Okay. Even though it hadn't shown up in the test, it was coming for me. Stroke was coming for me. All of that was coming for me. And so obesity is linked to all of these diseases that prevent us from living full, healthy lives. And you have to, and here's like the bigger question is, people fundamentally know that, right? Most people, if I eat a certain way, if I did, that this will cause a disease, especially people that have diabetes, right? They already have it. They know if they correct their diet, they can get well, but they don't. And the reason that they don't, I am convinced, is because they don't know how. They aren't given the correct tools to do it. Because it's not weight loss, it's addiction. And addiction needs to be treated in a different way. So you can know it, you can want to do it, but not have the tools to do it. The research will tell you, we're talking, I mean, though, I want you to send me those numbers that you told me about. You think about the 75% of people that say that they're emotional eaters. They admit it, they know it, they say it. And then there's another 25 that don't admit it, but they are. Everybody eats emotional. Everybody does. We just have to decide which emotion it is. But for those who feel disempowered by some emotion, or emotional eating or stress eating, yo-yo dieting, cravings that takes them to a place of ill health, they know it. They know the problem is emotion. But the solutions that are out there are the Mediterranean diet, the keto diet, the GLPs, the cookie diet, the Weight Watchers. I did them all. But those things do not address emotion. Those things address food. So there's some people are over here saying, this is my problem. But the solutions don't solve the problem. The solutions that solve the problem are the things that allow you to get your brain back, to reprogram your own brain, to reprogram your own thoughts. The ones I told you about, the ones that are for the most part free. They are not big business. That's why they're not pushed. I mean, I teach people how to do it. I have a course, but I have a free PDF somebody can download, learn how to do affirmations, meditation, affirmation, visualization, prescriptive writing. They can read this free PDF and do it themselves. But if you decide you want to be in a community, you want more support, more guided support, you can get it. But you don't have to. Those four, that going inside to these emotions that this culture does not teach us to embrace or honor. And not being able to manage our emotions, identify our emotions, live with them, know that they're just data, not put some sort of judgment on them, that cripples people. That right? It's crippling. So not only is this issue putting people at a disadvantage when it comes to their physical health, it's putting people at a disadvantage when it comes to their mental health too. This is a mental health issue. This is a mental health issue. Because if you don't know how to manage the emotions and you think food can heal an emotional place, nothing gets met. The emotions never get dealt with or addressed or solved, and you're using stuff that they call food that's not really food to give you some comfort or give you something to separate you from whatever the emotional distress is, and that's not even nourishing your body. So we're walking around wholesale with people with at least two sets of unmet needs.
Can you talk a little bit more about how pharma plays into this, and how is the health vertical, the health market, this food industry linked with the pharma
Yeah.
industry?
The pharmaceutical companies are not out to cure disease. They're not. They're not out. They're not out to cure it. They're not out to prevent it. And okay, you asked me that question. Here's this. I haven't talked about this for a little while, but I want to talk about this right now. So just a few months ago, the news came out that red dye number 40 causes cancer. There are people that have talked about that and known that for years, but now they're going to make it official and say it does. Red dye number 40. And so now the manufacturers, those that had used red dye number 40, have until 2026 to no longer include it in their whatever it is that they sell. 2026. So do people just still continue to eat this, the Twizzlers and the red Kool-Aid and all that until 2026? That we know we know it causes cancer. We just said it causes cancer, but we're gonna sell it anyway. So what can people do? Not buy it, right? But we are so trusting, and so you're asking about the connection. As long as people are eating this processed disease causing stuff, then there will always be a need for there to be some sort of pharmaceutical for the pharmaceutical companies to all come in and offer some sort of mitigation. For people to have the mindset of, oh, even this, what is that? And this is like, I think, relatively minor for folks that are lactose intolerant. There's a product out there that you can take this product so that you can drink the stuff that makes you lactose intolerant. Now, my question about that is, if your body, the fact that you are intolerant of this thing is your body saying, this doesn't agree with me. I don't like this. This is not working for me. But I want to override what my body says, take this thing that they have made for me to take, right? So I can drink this because it tastes good and override the messages that my body is giving to me, because I think taste is better, because I'm getting the messaging that there's something in this that I should have because it tastes good.
The question that I would ask someone listening to this is, what is intolerant by your body that you are tolerating with your mind?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah. It is that is such a loaded question, right? But it's an important question. And the reason that it's an important question, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, is because of what I said earlier, is that everything that's happening on our bodies, any extra weight, any extra pound, any extra anything, is a manifestation of something that's going on in our mind that is unresolved. And so this extra, and sometimes I think, this extra weight, I won't say it's a good thing, but the extra weight is a message. It is saying there's something you need to pay attention to. This is showing up like this. I'm trying to tell you, deal with the stuff that's going on inside. That's why I can't protect you. I'm trying to protect you with this extra weight, but I cannot. But I'm doing the best I can. But if you deal with the stuff on the inside, then I'll go away, right? I'll go away. But you got to deal with the heaviness of the disappointment, of the inadequacy, of the shame, of the struggle, of the blame, of the frustration, of the doubt, of the anxiety, of all of that, and not be afraid of that, and know that those things are just part of life, right? But it's having a systematic way to be able to identify that that's an emotion. Where does it show up in your body, right? Is it a time of day? Is it a certain person? Is it a certain situation? What does it feel like? Because sometimes if it shows up in your stomach, you think it's hunger and it's not, and so you eat, right? You eat the cup, but it's not even hunger. It's tension. It's tension that shows up in your stomach. So that that piece of dealing with this head work, that's why the writing is so important. Because once you put it down on paper, you can create a plan around it. Once you put it on paper, then you can name it. Then you can deal with it. Then you can. That makes it real. It takes it from this thing that you can't name, that you don't know how to deal with. I just put it on paper. Now I can identify it. Now that I can identify it, then I can come up with a plan to deal with it. But let me put it on paper, right? Let me meditate about it, right? Let me imagine, when I visualize what my life would be like if I was not dealing with that thing, right? Let me imagine some powerful places, some events, some people, some situations where I feel powerful, where I feel confident, where I feel like I got it all together. And let me take that mindset and apply it to this situation right now, where I'm feeling kind of weak, right? Having the skill to do that, to be able to think through that. And when you have that, then you don't have to go for the Twinkies, right? You don't have to go to the Twinkies, because you got something else that's substantive.
So many times the decisions that we make they're so against even our own values, but we still make them. And I'm just so fascinated by, when it comes to change, you need to change your behavior, right? You're talking about positive visualization. You're talking about looking at yourself from a place of power. At the same time, there's also a lot of power in looking at your life where you are feeling powerless,
Hmm.
in the sense that if you were to ask yourself, okay, one way to look at change is that when the pain of being the same is higher than the pain of changing, you change. The motivation is driven from a place of almost fear, of fear of staying the same at this point
Hmm.
and moving. And then there's I think they're complementary. What you're saying is this idea of like seeing yourself at a higher state, a better state, the better version of you, the more improved version of you, the healthier version of you. Talk to me about how can we use both the fear and the power
Yes, 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 yes.
navigating that.
All right. So I want to talk to you about using both of them because that is important. I talk about it all the time. But I want to go to the thing that you said first about pain and what motivates people when it comes to pain. There is a story, and there's a story of the man who walks up. There's a farmer. There's a farmer, sitting outside on his porch. He's sitting there with his dog, and the dog is moaning. And the stranger says, Mr. Farmer, your dog is moaning. He says, yeah, I know. He says, well, why is he moaning? The farmer says, well, because he's in pain. And the guy says, well, why is he in pain? And he says, well, he's laying on a nail. And the guy says, well, if he's laying on a nail, why doesn't he get up? And the farmer says, doesn't hurt that much, right? Hurts just enough for me to lay here and moan about it, but not enough for me to do anything about it. And what happened, and what has happened with so many of us, is that we have been in pain for so long that it feels normal. It doesn't even feel like pain. For some of us, we haven't seen what good health looks like. We don't even know what good health looks like. We see bad health and call it good health. We don't even know what it looks like. I can talk about that from being Black, from growing up, right? And how folks will say, "Oh, look at her, she's so nice, she's big and healthy." Because bigness meant something else. It meant that you got plenty. It means you're not starving. You're not approaching this from a place of lack. So then if you take those same principles, and that might have worked, decades ago before the food supply is what it is now. Right? It might have been okay. But now it means something different. But if you're carrying those old thoughts and beliefs about how to eat different things based on cuisine and available food of 50 years ago, and you're trying to do it now, it doesn't work.
Mm.
It will send you to a place of ill health. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a farm. I remember in my book, I write about my grandmother making fried corn, us pulling the corn off the stalks, and her kind of like shaving the tips and then culling the cream out, and how tender and juicy and how wonderful it was back in the 1960s. You couldn't pay me to eat corn now. You can't pay me enough, right? So that this idea of pain and what good health looks like, and even to the point of believing you deserve it. So there are a lot of
Mm.
there are a lot of messages that are tied up into that. All right, so I wanted to talk about that, but I want to talk about what you said before.
Can I just say something real quick here and hold that thought? Have you heard of this concept of golden handcuffs?
Yes,
We look at it from the standpoint of our careers, and we talk about this golden handcuff problem where, like, where people are living and working in careers that are paying them a good enough salary, but it's this weird zone where you are doing you're in just enough of a good spot where you don't feel like you need to change your life, but you're miserable in that career and you don't like what you're doing. I hope that we talk more about the golden handcuffs problem from this standpoint. What is the golden handcuff in health? It is exactly what you said. It's this feeling of we are just okay where we're at, and nothing has really shaken up our body, our mind, to the point where we want to change. But if we don't change and we continue on with the habits that we have right now, those are coming. Those golden handcuffs are just going to turn into handcuffs.
yes, yes, yeah. They are. They're gonna turn into the handcuffs that squeeze the life out of your wrists and out of you. So I'm glad you brought up this career in golden handcuffs, and I'm happy to make this detour because this brings me into something that impacted me, and I think it impacts a lot of other Black women, and I think not just Black women. I think it impacts a lot of other people who are very career oriented and who are struggling with their weight. Is that what happens? Is that you feel like you can break through the glass ceiling. You feel very accomplished at your job. You get the promotions, right? You get all the awards. You're successful in this career lane. But when it comes to weight and managing your weight, you never go into a conference room You never open a door without wondering if I'm going to be the biggest one in the room. That never happens. And so while you may feel like you have some career success, every day you wake up with this feeling unsuccessful and a failure when it comes to managing the most basic thing, which is how you move through the world. And it's not a moral failing, it's just you just don't have the skill. And that's what I want people to understand, that it's not your fault that this environment conspires to keep us at this disempowered place. But my point is this, is that when you get to that place where you're like, okay, I can just do my career. I know I can be successful at that. I can do that. And this weight thing, I can't figure it out. Right. And so what happens is you end up spending more time in the career. You end up bringing in more stress, doing more of the thing that you know how to do, but it keeps you from leaning into the thing that you don't know how to do, which is manage your emotions around food so that you can get healthy. And it is especially difficult, and it's especially trying if you're in a career that you like, if you're doing a job that you like, because it's so easy to do more of it. That's where that golden handcuff thing comes in. And in my book, I write about it. Going to my doctor, and my doctor is the one who, she asked me 10,000 questions. She asked me 10,000 questions about my job and what I was doing. And at the end, she said, it's stress. Stress will kill you. Yeah, I'm just trying to go to Ann Taylor, right? That's all I'm doing. I'm trying to go to Ann Taylor. But she's like, stress will kill you. You have got to change this. And so that when we start looking at this and seeing it as a bigger conversation and understanding that this is a life and death conversation, right? What does that really mean to you? And have some critical thought about it, not the thoughts that we've been programmed to have about it. Things start to shift. But I do want to say that, that the shifts, they come a little bit at a time. Now you can have a life altering moment like my uncle did with the watermelon story. I'm not saying that they don't happen from time to time, but most of the time you just make little shifts along the way, little changes, little tweaks, little aha moments, and you just stay in this lane of growing and understanding. And the more you understand, the more something else will come to you. And what happens, I'm going to circle back around. When I'm coaching people, I say, once you decide that you want to do something, once you decide that you want to change your behavior in a certain way, as soon as you make that decision, something's going to come up to challenge it. But something is also going to come up to support it too. Both things happen. Both things happen.
Where does that come from? Where does the challenge come from? Where does the support come from? Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. Let's say I'll give you my own personal example. I love cashews, right? And I'm sure I eat far too many of them. But anyway, I have to be very conscious about I have to be very conscious about cashews, right? And so it could happen like this. I will say, I'm not buying. I'm going into the store. Going to buy any cashews today, and I do that, right? That's my affirmation. That's me telling myself what I am going to do. And our brains will listen to us. Our brains will do what we tell if we tell it in advance. So I'll say, I'm not going to buy any cashews today. So I go in the store, and guess what? Cashews are on sale. Right? It's, so that that's that's the universe. That's the universe coming up to challenge me to see if I'm really serious about whether or not I'm going to get the cashews. Right. So I walk in, cashews on sale. No, I just said I'm not going to get cashews. Then um, I leave the store. I leave the store. I get in my car. And when I get in my car, a client calls me and tells me that they just lost 3 pounds or something, or I look on my phone and I see an uplifting message, or I see something like that. That is the universe coming to support the decision that I made to leave the cashews there. Both things happen. Both things happen.
Totally agree. To kind of wrap this up, have we not surfaced a conversation that you think you really need to bring out?
Man, we have covered a lot, haven't we? Yeah, so yeah, there is something. I want to talk about the process of transformation. And I've alluded to this a little bit because I've talked about you have to do something different in order to get something different. And my my brand, my publishing company is called Brand New Now Press. My brand is under Brand New, and I teach using that brand new framework. And it is a framework for this transformation that I've talked about that happens a little bit at a time. And the first thing you have to do is with that B is you have to begin to believe. You have to believe that it's possible. The change that you want, this belief, this expectation, this desire that is for you. We just have sometimes that first step is the hardest, right? But once we make that first step, once we step into belief, right? That's what the B stands for. Then it's rise up and reinvent. So we all have these stories, or you call them food stories, these limiting beliefs that keep us stuck. We have to rise up above those stories and rewrite them. And when we rewrite those stories, we reinvent ourselves and we reinvent how we manage our emotions and how we manage food. That's the R in being brand new. Then there's alignment and accountability, right? And so that piece, that alignment and accountability, you talked about it before, right? This is like when your actions and your words are in the same lane or in the same lane when they match up. I want to be healthy, right? I want to live a better life. I want to live longer, right? I want to do that. Well, then there's some actions that come along with being in alignment with that desire. And being in a group, being with someone where you are accountable to them and they are accountable to you, because the reality is sometimes we'll show up for other people when we won't show up for ourselves. It goes it's a two-way street. But then when you have somebody that shows up for you, that starts to teach you that you are worthy. You are worthy for that present, right? So we need that alignment and accountability. The N is nutrition and nourishment. We talked a good deal about that. To know. We have to know real food from fake food. We have to be willing not to eat that which will kill us, which will impair our health, no matter what everybody else is eating, no matter what's going on. We have to be willing to step into that truth around what's going on in our bodies. That's nutrition and nourishment. Then the D, this is all part of the transformation. DSW. Some people think that stands for shoes. I think it stands for drink, sleep, and write. Because we need the hydration, we need to sleep. Those things help us process the toxins out of our body and help us get healthy. The writing addresses to the fact that the thing that we've talked about a good deal for the past hour about the mental work that has to happen first before anything else that can happen. DSW, drink, sleep, right. Then N in new is no is the new yes. We go back to that vision. You have to know what you have envisioned for yourself. That's your yes. And when you have that yes, when you have that vision, then that empowers you to say no to everything that will not get you there, because it becomes about achieving that vision, right? So what you're saying no to empowers you to step into the yes that you really want for yourself. Then E in new is evaluate, ask, think. And we went through all those questions. If you don't do
Hmm.
it, if you're listening to this, if you don't do any of these, if you just lean into those questions and start questioning everything you put in your mouth, like why do you drink water with a meal? Some very basic things. Why do you drink water with a meal? Because if you look at the research, what you'll see is that if you chew your food, you don't need water, and if you're drinking water while you're eating, what the water does is dilutes the digestive juices and makes it harder for you to digest your food.
You know,
And yet, water shows up at all our bills.
it's so funny you say that, because complete side story is like it was kind of very normal in our family to, especially like my grandparents. My grandmother would say that if you want to have water, have it at least half an hour before your meal. Don't have it during your meal ever. But the thing is, I just never knew why. I
Hmm.
There were so many of these little rituals we did around food, and it just like the research is catching up to some of these. Like, we I don't know why we live in a world where we need to have the science back, like evidence back science research for every single thing that we do. And sometimes there's these traditions that are really just have been doing these things without thinking about them. And I think like for someone like me, I need to see the research before I can start putting it into something. And
Mhm.
I understand the purpose of that, but I just think to like such instances in my own life where my parents, my grandparents would just say these things as adages, and I would just not do them because I didn't understand why. So this makes sense.
There's a reason. There's a reason for that, right? There's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
reason
yeah.
for that. So that evaluate, ask, think, say. Accept that everything you believe right now about food is a lie. Everything you believe about food, eating, and hunger right now is not the truth. Just accept that, and then start building new. And that's process. That's questioning, right? Why is there such a thing as breakfast food? I mean, a meal is a protein, a starch, and a vegetable, or a protein, a vegetable, and a vegetable, depending on where you are. Why is something breakfast food? If a meal is it what the breakfast food people told us is breakfast food? How about that? You gonna eat that for breakfast? Why not? Right? So evaluate, ask and think. And then the W in brand new is wow. Wow, I'm worth it. Because if you go through all those 7 principles, you spend a week doing those principles, you spend a day leaning into those principles, you will be changed. And after you've done it, you need to just like sit back and reflect a moment, right? And clap it up for yourself. Look how far I've come. Look how far I've come. And then after you finish with the W, you start right back over again. You start back with the B. You go through it again, and each time you go through it at a higher level.
I love how the W goes back to the B as well, because it's how, why I'm worth it is that belief, and you're going back to beginning to believe. So you're this reinforcing loop. I love that.
Yeah. Yes. So that's how you transform. That's how you change. That's how you become brand new. And here's the thing. Once you are transformed, you don't go back to being the way that you were. Just like butterflies don't go back to being caterpillars, you can't unlearn what you've learned. You don't go back. Once you start walking, you don't crawl anymore because you know how to walk. You don't go back.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was amazing. And thank you to everyone that's listening. This is a fantastic conversation. And I think we covered so much around things that I wanted to cover around food. And I'm so glad that you were able to join. And I hope that we can have this again on different topics. I feel like we barely touched on some things we want to talk about. For example, the social side of it, the how to deal with family,
Absolutely.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah. And I just, I love your curiosity. I love your questions. I love that you hold space for these conversations. And you're doing just such good, important work.
Thank you so much, Michelle. You too. Awesome.